Hey everybody, in this video, we're doing something a little bit different. If you're looking to move to Portland, Oregon, then check out this video. We're gonna get into our 3-year review.
Now that we've lived here for 3.5 years, really, we wanted to talk about the highs, the lows, the things that surprised us in good ways and bad ways, and overall, how we're feeling about this huge life change moving to Portland.
Hey everybody, I'm Aaron Cullen. This is my wife, Brianna Cullen, and we live in Lake Oswego, right outside of Portland, Oregon. I can't wait to tell you, we do love it here. But we want to share with you our journey. It's been a little over 3 years since we moved here from out of state. And since we have a real estate company, we wanted to share our story with you in case it might resonate, and you might be able to pick up a few little things that might make you feel better and more comfortable about your move to Portland.
I think first it helps to know that it was a really big decision, and moving states, moving cities is a huge decision for people and not one that we took lightly at all. So when we moved here a little over 3 years ago from the Los Angeles area, we had a 18-month-old daughter. We knew we wanted to have more kids, and our work situations had changed so that we were more remote and we really had the opportunity to decide where we wanted to live. And it was a huge deal. It was a really hard decision. As we were going through the closing of our home, the entire time I was like, are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure? Are we sure? Aaron is very decisive, and so he was sure. But
as soon as I saw the home, I fell in love with it. The first time I came to Lake Oswego, I flew out first, and we had never actually been here. Bri used to live in Portland, but she had never really been to Lake Oswego. So I flew out here first. And as soon as I went to Millennial Plaza and looked out over the lake and was right there in downtown, I just knew right then, I was like, we're gonna be happy here. I was like, I don't care what I see. I hadn't even seen the house yet that we had under contract in person. I just knew it was gonna be a good fit.
He called me from Saint Honoré, which is a French bakery right there in the plaza. And it was a sunny day in April. And he was like, what's not to like? He was giddy. We always knew that eventually we were going to get out of LA for a lot of reasons. One, our money just didn't go very far in terms of our housing and our lifestyle. And I grew up in a small town a lot like Lake Oswego, and I think we both knew that eventually we wanted that kind of community for our family.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd lived in a bunch of big cities, and I'd lived in smaller cities growing up throughout my life. And I'd spent the last 12 years in Los Angeles, and I knew as soon as we had our first child and we were starting a family, it just wasn't conducive to big city life. There were several factors that I find that's a theme with the clients that I help moving here from other bigger cities to Portland. It's too much traffic, whether it's the smog or getting around is more difficult. And then once you have a family, it becomes even harder to get around, just to do normal things or go to the beach or go to a museum or even just go to the grocery store.
Yeah, our kids are not big on being in the car, and getting around LA anywhere just to see your friends is an hour drive, an hour and a half sometimes, and It just doesn't work with little kids. So we didn't get to appreciate the good that LA had anymore. We really needed a more family-friendly environment. And then, like I said, the value that we could get for our money in LA versus Portland was just night and day.
Yeah, and that was really the biggest factor, was the cost of living, housing being number one. And what we could get, we were out house shopping in around Los Angeles area, and then we started looking, we kind of want to live somewhere else. So we looked at about 5 other different cities, what our same money there could get us in other places for really what we wanted to spend, not what we had to spend in Los Angeles, in the high cost of living area, but what we wanted to spend, what we felt comfortable spending, and the type of house we wanted. And that's what led us to Portland. And there was other cheaper options, but we really wanted to stay West Coast. We both lived on the West Coast for so long. I think it just felt more comfortable to us.
Yeah, I have family in Indianapolis, and we have a lot of rental properties there. So we looked at Indy, and we just weren't sure that the weather and a lot of other things were the right fit for us. And so ultimately we found this house, and then we decided to move to Lake Oswego. And it's so interesting what we thought we were going to enjoy about it versus what real life has been like. So we moved here in the summer of 2019. We had about 6 months before the pandemic started. And that has really colored our experience quite a bit, I think. There obviously so many people have relocated during the pandemic, but we did move here before that. We had a little bit of a chance to make friends and get to know the community and get to, get our daughter involved in a preschool and go to the library, all the things that sort of anchor you in a community. And then we were on lockdown for, the better part of a year and a half, 2 years. And I would say, unequivocally, I am so grateful that we got to spend that time here because of things like access to so much nature. That's one of the things about being in Portland that we both appreciate so much. And when we moved from LA, we had moved out to Topanga Canyon because we had wanted that nature experience to be able to go out your door and go hiking.
Be a little further from the city, have a little more connectedness to being able to not have to drive out to nature.
Yeah, exactly. And so our experience here, just getting out into nature, there's a hiking trail down the street from our house, and that's just not unique to us. That is so many people's experience living in Portland, is that there is a park, a hiking trail. We can go blackberry picking down the street. Last weekend we went and had our Christmas tree cut down for us 9 minutes from our house.
And having access to those things so close to home, with being 5 to 10 minutes from where we live, having those farm type experiences is really invaluable for us. We hold a high value to that, and it just helps us get connected, back to nature, disconnect from our cell phones, computers, and for the kids to get out there and breathe fresh air and see the trees and ask questions about things that they normally don't experience living closer to the city.
While we're talking about nature, I feel like it's a natural segue to talk a little bit about the weather. I know that was a big concern of mine moving here. You weren't as worried about it, but I had lived in the Northwest before. I grew up in Arizona and then spent my adult life in Southern California. I like a lot of blue sky and sunshine, and so I was worried about the weather.
Yeah, and I wasn't as worried about the weather. I really don't know why I was. And if I think about it, I think it's because I was kind of over the perpetual sunny weather. I had lived it. I was over 40 by the time we moved here. So I had spent the better part of, my end of my 20s and full of my 30s in this sunny weather.
Year-round beach volleyball.
I took advantage of it. My friends and I, we had a ritual. We'd play beach volleyball every Saturday or Sunday throughout the winter, the summer. We'd go sailing. I belonged to a yacht club. I really took advantage of the sunny weather, and the weather was really changing. It was starting to get warmer. We were getting a lot less rain. Really, the last 7-8 years I was there. The first half, 5-6 years I was there, we would have a rainy season in Southern California, and they had been in a big drought, and so with that shifting weather pattern, I felt like that was starting to kind of wear on me a little bit. It felt more like living in the desert a little bit more than it used to.
But not to sugarcoat it. This winter, as this winter hit, you were like, oh, because it is a long, dark, rainy winter in the Northwest. I think, some years it's easier than others, and it's so important to figure out ways to make the most of that. I think for me, having 4 seasons again, I grew up in a mountain town with snow and 4 seasons. It really does mark time in a way that feels festive and special. We actually had our first snowfall the night before last, and so we woke up to a very light dusting of snow, and our kids are so excited about that. We roasted marshmallows in front of the fire and had s'mores, and those seasons really do mark time for us. And then when spring comes, we're so excited to get back outside, to eat dinners in the backyard. And so to me, it really does balance out the fact that there is more rain, it is colder, it does get darker earlier, but you also get that flip side of festivity and seasonality.
And if you're moving from a colder place like New York, Chicago, it's going to be way more mild for you. So that winter is going to be a bonus, a plus, because it's not going to be, you're not dealing with all the ice, all the snow. You know, this morning, the local schools got a notification that they pushed the starting time by 2 hours, right? And last night, we got just a little bit of dusting of snow, like yesterday, and it stopped around 4 p.m. And we look outside, I mean, there's no snow on the roads anywhere. It's just kind of funny that, you know, this just gives you a little sample of, hey, we just get a little bit of snow, and there's going to be certain delays with things because we just don't get a bunch of snow here.
I think we went to a Christmas party on Saturday night, and we were talking with some people who had just moved here from the Orange County area, and they moved here in the summer, and they got invited to a Christmas party, and they were talking about how warm and friendly and how much easier it has been to make friends here. Their son is in preschool, and they said that the community with his preschool has been so inviting, birthday parties and gatherings, and they were really surprised by that. And I think that is also something that cannot be overstated, especially here in Lake Oswego, but also in the neighborhoods and pockets of Portland. There's such a strong community feeling, and that's something that also in LA, for us, everyone was so spread out, and it's such a commuter city. Whereas here, people are much more tapped into their local community. And so it's easier to run into people when you're out and about, which I love. It makes me feel very anchored in a community. And it's just so much easier to get together with people. Our cul-de-sac here, everyone is always looking out for each other. We've had a couple of big things happen. The pandemic, we had a big ice storm where we lost power a couple of years ago, and everyone was sharing firewood, checking in, and it's a very family-oriented community here in Lake Oswego, but everyone in our cul-de-sac is from different stages of life. Some people have small kids, some people are retired, and still everyone really comes together.
Yeah, no, they really do, and that's one thing that surprised me. And it's kind of funny because when I think about it, it wasn't even, I just accepted it and went with it. I wasn't like in shock or anything like that. Maybe I just kind of like expected it a little bit, but like that's what I was looking for. So it really connected with me, and it was easy just to kind of go with the flow of that. Coming from Los Angeles, and it was also kind of a little shifting of another stage of our lives, of moving here, having our second kid, transitioning from the no kids stage of life to the kids stage of life, and everything's just kind of seemed easy in that regard. When I look back at it in kind of in our 3-year review of how that's been, and I think for me, it just really helps connect with the community like you're talking about, because it's easy, and so it kind of comes naturally if you're open to that and you're looking for that. And we definitely were.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the hardest things about moving, and that's one of the things that we were worried about. We really did have a great community in LA. We had just had our daughter, and I had a lot of other friends who had kids the same age, and it was scary to move away from that. And so it was such a welcome surprise that we were able to build community, make friends, even during a pandemic here. And I think one of the things we were talking with people about at this holiday party over the weekend is that in Lake Oswego and in Portland, there have been a lot of transplants, a lot of inflow of people over the last few years. And so some cities, some towns are very hard to break into the social fabric because people have been there for their whole life. They already have their defined friend group, and it's hard to get in. Whereas here, people felt very open. Other families and other people are interested in building community and making friends.
And if you do move here, definitely look for local clubs or groups. I have a local dads group that I started right before the pandemic started, and now we have 80 members, and it's great because we do in-person meetings. We'll go get a beer once a month. We try to post if kids are going to the parks, and other dads have been able to connect from there and make real friendships, and I think that's really cool. And it's not unique. You belong to a mom's group, and they have meetings in person. You meet people, you develop friendships, and you'll see them at the farmer's market, or you'll see them maybe at the grocery store or around town, because even though Lake Oswego, where we live particularly, has 40,000 people, all the different suburbs or parts of the city that might be a good fit for you is going to have some version of that, where people are going to be local, shopping local. Take advantage of the different groups and what are your interests, and get into that. And I think just by doing that and putting yourself out there, that'll really help speed up your connectedness to the community.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
getting that value. And that's one of the things I've noticed here is it really is available because it is a smaller city. So those things are a lot easier, and people are friendly.
And because it's a smaller town and each of the Portland areas have this same feeling, it's like there's one farmer's market, and so you're gonna run into people there. People are going to the same place for swimming lessons or ballet or all these things, and so you do run into people, and that gives a sense that your kids know people in the community, people know them and are looking out for them, and it creates a real sense of, it feels wholesome.
Let's talk about schools. That's one topic that's very high on the priority list for clients that are moving here from out of state. And that was actually really high with us as well. So do you want to kick that off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a lot of big cities, there's a sense that you'll either go to private school, depending on what your local schools are like, or being very selective about your neighborhood so that you feel good about the school district and all of that. And so one of the things that we liked coming into Lake Oswego was knowing that it's a very high quality school district, ranked #1 in the state. And there's an elementary school walking distance to our house that's a very highly rated elementary school. We'd heard really good things about it. And so that was definitely high on our priority list, and I know same for a lot of your clients.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we picked Lake Oswego, not the only reason, but just one of the another bonuses, is Lake Oswego has the highest rated school district in the state. So that really put it high up on my list.
Our kids aren't in elementary school yet, so we are still in private preschool, and we've had a really good experience with that. There's a lot of different options there, and I think I have friends that live in LA and in the Bay Area, and the application process just to get into preschool is so intense, and I think our experience here just speaks to a little bit more of the laid back lifestyle in Portland in general, is that I don't think that there's any lacking in quality. I think the quality is still there, but the overcrowding and the sense of competition is just less here. And for me personally, I didn't want to spend like half of my life applying to schools for my kids.
Yeah. And just the financial burden on that as well, because living in Los Angeles, we would have to probably send them to private school unless we stayed in Topanga or certain areas where they have a smaller niche public option that is really good. You have to really go to the outskirts.
So I think we should sum up, and we should figure out so how to sum up, like we don't really look back at all. We never really have. I think within our first full season here, driving around during the holidays, experiencing some of the events that the city puts on in the holiday season. There is a big organized Halloween party for school age kids here. There is a holiday trolley at Christmas time where you can get tickets and ride on the trolley and sing carols, and Santa gets onto the trolley and comes around and sees all of the kids. There's a big like Hallmark movie style Christmas tree lighting, and there are summer concerts in the park and movies at night. And going through that full first season and really getting a sense of like living in a community where the city cares about our quality of life was so huge for us. And then adding on top of that, the friends that we've made, the school system, the nature, the access to the beaches and the mountains here in Oregon. I feel so lucky to have found this town, and I'm sure that it's not the only town like this, obviously, in the United States, but it does feel like a well-kept secret, and I feel lucky to have happened upon it. Mm-hmm. We have some friends who grew up here and then went away to school and lived in bigger cities and started their adult lives in other cities. And then when they had kids, have come back to raise their families here. And I think that says a lot about their appreciation of what it was like to grow up here.
Yeah, I think that really resonates with me too. And it doesn't surprise me. I grew up partly in Houston, Texas. It was Austin, Texas, and then Houston, Texas when I was going through high school. And one thing that always struck me was a lot of parents of some of my friends, they had also grown up in that area. It was called Kingwood, Texas. And then they had moved on, and then once they started a family, they moved back to raise their kids there. And that was a suburb outside of Houston, Texas. And it was in nature, there's tons of trees everywhere. And so I think part of that growing up kind of resonated with me with Lake Oswego, because there's trees here everywhere, and people do move back to raise their kids if they live elsewhere in the US, because it really is a good family-centric neighborhood. So, do you have any regrets?
No regrets.
No regrets. I would say I have no regrets either. The only thing, of course, you're gonna miss somewhere that you lived for so long and that has different pluses and minuses to it. For me, it's kind of funny enough, because we talk about this sometimes. I get a little, not homesick, but I miss a few certain things that I could totally do without. Like for me, there was this taco place.
I knew you were gonna say that.
And Lisa, there's this taco place
in Silver
Lake that I loved their tacos. They had these bison tacos, and the way they made them, and they had this really hot salsa, and you could just get an ice cold beer. I mean, I loved those tacos. It was a real treat for me to be able to have those. And I haven't been able to find a place like that here yet. But those
and
are
that's how I feel about like Malibu Country Mart and the pier on the other side of town. And that's just like, we loved it there. You know, it wasn't that we were like, LA is terrible, let's get out of there. We loved it there. We were just ready for something new. And so I think there are definitely things that we miss a lot.
Yeah, it's just those certain experiences or places you like to go. But overall, we both really love living here and can't imagine going back and living back and having the same life there. I think it would just be a whole totally different circumstance, and we just really like everything about here, like living here.
And I think everybody's situation is different, and the reason that you're moving might be different, or why you're thinking about certain towns. And so we've told a very particular story to us. But if you have questions or you're not quite sure that this is the right fit for you, please reach out, because we will be totally honest about your situation and whether there's anything that might not fit for you, or which pocket of Portland would make the most sense for you and your interests.
I hope hearing our story has been a little helpful to you guys and making that decision to move a little bit easier. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Aaron Cullen. I'm a local real estate agent right here in Portland, Oregon, and I help people just like you make that transition to Portland, Oregon. See you guys in the next one.